Hey everybody, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. I am Justorian, and this is...
Derricker.
Right, we only have, 22 more books?
Who's counting?
We'll be in our early 50s by the time we get done with this series. 40s, yeah.
I mean, you're going to be 37 here pretty quick.
Yes.
Couple months?
Yes, September. Fucking old man.
Yeah. I just know you're like 6 months older than I am.
Yeah, because your birthday's what, March 24th?
Damn, dude, nice. Sorry, I don't remember what day yours is.
It's the 3rd.
Oh, I was going to say the 12th for some reason.
It's divisible by 4.
Works. I was just multiplying in my head.
Yeah, I mean, you divide it 12 by 4, you get 3. So,
right.
You were kind of right in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's cool. But yeah, I guess it's weird, man, having 2 chapters left, and then I'm going to read it when we're done here, and then it'll just be like, 1 chapter and an epilogue left. So I'm really curious as to what is actually going to happen in this next chapter. So yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It just seems so uncertain. Like, I don't know how all the plot points are going to come together, and like it just feels like this book should be about 1,500 pages.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I would imagine that some of these plot points are going to carry over into other books. But yeah, I guess we can kind of talk about it as we go through here.
Sure.
But yeah, I guess, do you want to keep doing the Silverstones thing, or do you just want me to reuse that from other episodes?
I'll do it here. I can do it.
Keep it genuine.
Yeah. Just like the last few weeks here, beginning of our episode, we want to thank Kevin and Silverstone Books. He's still got that promo code active for us, DJ Quest. We're still waiting for somebody to use it. So if you use it, let us know. We'll give you a shout out. That'd be cool. Just a small little thing, but let us know what you got, what you picked up, and all that good stuff. It's good for us, good for Silverstone, good for the authors. So we're just all trying to help everybody out. So that's what we've been trying to do.
Yeah. And if you haven't already, guys, please check out our interview with Kevin from Silverstone's Books. It's on our YouTube page. It's wherever you can find us normally. Give it a listen. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, it's only about an hour. So, I mean, for the most part, that's a pretty short episode for us.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's definitely on the shorter end of the spectrum, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But, Kevin was a cool dude, and, hearing how he came up with Silverstone's Books and just all the triumphs and tribulations that go along with owning a bookstore, an independent bookstore at that, was very fascinating. So we enjoyed that conversation with Kevin. I think that you all will as well. So give it a listen if you haven't.
Definitely.
Cool. Well, as far as our patrons in order of subscription, we've got Jan, the Picker of Pies, Luciana Edtrigan, Ryan, the Topological, Damon, the Rock of Faces, Nate, Fiddle Me This, Shield Anvil Dylan, and then Quartermaster Sergeant Lieutenant Parker.
You need Quartermaster Master Sergeant Lieutenant Parker.
Oh, shit, I fucked that up. Sorry, Parker. Quartermaster Master Sergeant Lieutenant Parker.
Right. Corporal List Parker.
Right. So yeah, you want to take us away on our epigraph here for chapter 22 of Deadhouse Gates?
Yeah. I mean, this one, after reading the chapter, makes a lot of sense now, but at the time it didn't. I saw the sun's bolt arc an unerring path to the man's forehead. As it struck, the crows converged like night, drawing breath. Dog chain, Siglora.
All right, first section here. Kalam stumbled onto the shore, collapsing onto mud. Warm blood soaked through his fingers that was held over the knife wound on his side. The assassin was shirtless, his armor sinking to the bottom of Malaz Bay. After he was plunged into the harbor, in order to remove his armor, he had to remove his belt and knife harness. In his desperation to reach the surface, he had let everything go to sink to the bottom, leaving him now unarmed. Somewhere out in the bay, a ship was being torn apart. The noises drifted across the water. He wondered about that, but only briefly, as he had other things on his mind. Struggling to slow his breathing, he squirmed further up the bank, broken crockery digging into his flesh as he squirmed forward to the first of the stone breakwater. He rolled onto his back and stared at the underside of the pier. He closed his eyes and began concentrating. The bleeding at his side slowed and then stopped. He sat up, pulling the eels off of him and tossing them back into the sea. He could hear the harbor rats skittering around, and the assassin had heard enough whispered tales to know he was anything but safe from the horde of this underworld. He could wait no longer and moved into a crouching position. Because the tide was low, he wouldn't be able to reach the massive bronze rings bolted to the harbor posts. The assassin made his way along until he came across a merchant trader's ship on its side. A hemp rope stretched from the bow to the rings on the harbor post. Kalam climbed the rope and slowly made his way to the bronze ring. Under normal circumstances, this would have been easy. Even with the inner discipline of a claw's training, he could not prevent the wound from bleeding as he made his way up the rope. When he reached the ring, he paused to recover his strength. There had been no time for thought since Salkilan had tossed him overboard. No time even now. Cursing his stupidity was a waste of time, as killers awaited him in Malaz City's dark and narrow streets. Kalam had no intention of being easy prey. Crouched against the ring, he slowed his breathing once more to still the seeping of blood. He thought to himself that eyes were on the rooftop with sorcery-enhanced vision, and he had no shirt to hide his body heat. They know he's wounded. He doubts even Surly in her prime could manage what he was about to attempt. Could he pull it off? Once more he closed his eyes and focused on recalling the blood seeping from the wound. Push it down into the muscle and bone. Every breath must be ice. Every touch upon the stone street must match its temperature. He continued to think of what they could expect from a wounded man. He told himself, not this. He opened his eyes and released his grip on the ring. He told himself that it was time to move. He slowly pulled himself onto the surface. Front streets stretched before him. Cargo carts crowded the street, and the nearest one was 20 feet from him. To run would be to invite death. Flat on his belly, he edged forward slowly. He thought to himself that sorcery makes a hunter lazy, tuned to only expect the obvious, but they forget the game of shadows. He couldn't look up, but he knew he was completely exposed, like a worm crawling across a street. Kalam wanted to panic, but years of training suppressed this urge. He hoped that the overcast sky stayed the way that it was, as the moon would be his enemy if it were to break through the sky coverage. Minutes passed as Kalam finished his slow crawl across the street. The city beyond was silent, which was very unusual. Kalam has a thought about being potentially spotted, but if he was, why spoil the game that's been set up to be a pleasure? Why prepare a maze just for the target to be killed before he can enter? He was beneath the cart. He paused. They were expecting a contest of subtlety, but sleight of hand was one of Kalam's talents. He cleared the first wagon, then the next three, until he reached the warehouse door. The cargo entrance doors were huge, two panels chained together by a huge padlock. Off to the side was a smaller door, also padlocked. He darted to the small door, and pressed his body flat up against the door. Kalam twisted the padlock, and while itself did not break, the bearings it was secured to did. Kalam pulled the door back just enough to allow him to squeeze in. A search inside revealed some tools, a pair of pick thongs, a hatchet, cloth tacks, and a work knife. He found a blacksmith's leather work shirt and put it on. In the back room, he discovered the back door that slipped into the alley behind the warehouse. The Deadhouse, he judged, was about 6 streets away. He thought to himself that Salk knows, and therefore the others will be waiting for him. Kalam cracked open the door and peered out into the alleyway, seeing no movement. He pushed it open some more, scanning the nearest rooftops and then the sky. No one, and the clouds remained overcast. He stepped outside and walked down one edge of the crate-littered alley. A pool of deeper darkness occupied an alcove near the alley mouth. Kalam's eyes found it and locked onto it. He pulled out his knife and hatchet and without pause swept straight for it. The darkness engulfed its sorcery over him as he jumped into the alcove, his attack sudden. The two inside the alcove had no time to draw their weapons. His knife caught the throat of one and tore it out. The hatchet swung down to crush a collarbone and break some ribs. He let go of the hatchet and put his palm to the man's mouth as he drove the man's head into the wall. The female claw slid down with a wet gurgling sound. A moment later, Kalam was collecting claw equipment from the bodies. Kalam took the thin black coke from the man's corpse. The sorcery faded, revealing that at least one of them was a mage. Kalam thought to himself that it was damn sloppy, and Topper's been letting them get soft. He came out of the alcove and sniffed the air. A hand's link had been broken, and they would know that trouble had arrived. Kalam smiled and thought to himself that they wanted the quarry to run. He was so sorry to disappoint. He set out into the night, hunting Claw. I fucking loved this section. Just absolutely loved it. Definitely wasn't expecting any of it because, he's hurt, he's wounded, but, as we'll talk about, I think that there's maybe some sorcery at play here.
Definitely. And I was kind of surprised Manala didn't rescue him. He just kind of did it himself.
Well, do you think that Manala is still chasing him? I mean, I'm sure she is, but, is she just one step behind him, so to speak? Like, is she witnessing him massacre these two claws?
Very possible. I mean...
You'd think that she would make herself known, though.
Yeah. I mean, you went through the trouble of launching your horse off a ship. You'd think we'd hear something about it after the fact,
For sure. Yeah, I guess now that you bring it up, I guess I didn't even think about Manala until you basically just said something about it. So yeah, I wonder if like that's going to be somewhere, like if that's going to get answered in this book, or not, but who knows?
We got two chapters to find out.
Right. And an epilogue.
Yeah, true.
But the first thing that I had was when he closes his eyes at the beginning, as he's kind of like making his way from water to, the alleyways and the warehouses. The bleeding at his side had slowed and then stopped. And I'm kind of like, is this something that he can do now? Like, is this some type of sorceress ability where he can stop? I guess this whole time I never really envisioned in my headcanon that he was a mage or he had any sorceress abilities.
Yeah, I wonder how far it extends. I mean, it seems like he's at least got some, I guess, minor healing abilities.
Right. It's kind of where I'm gathering it too. So, because he does it twice, where he like pauses before he continues on to try to stop the bleeding.
Right. Yeah, it just seems like it's. I don't know. It's obviously not very strong. I mean, it's just kind of seems like it's buying him some time.
Right.
It's not like he didn't fully heal himself, but just trying to get himself to a spot where he can, I guess be safe and recover fully.
Well, and also, I mean, he talks about sorcery that, enhances sight, or I would imagine like heat vision, right? So he's like essentially very aware that whoever is waiting for him, which we find out to be Claus, which isn't really a surprise, that, they have the ability to enhance their senses with sorcery. So my guess is he wants to stop the blood because they can either maybe smell it or hear it drip or, see the temperature as it falls to the ground or something like that. So that's my guess.
I kept envisioning like the claws as like predators up on top of buildings, and just like the heat vision that they have, like that's what I envisioned.
I really love the way that Erickson is giving us, the reader, kind of an introduction to Kalam and his abilities, whether they're magical or not, or otherworldly or from another realm. I guess we don't really have any type of conclusivity there. But the whole part about every breath that he takes must be ice. So again, he can't be detected. Every touch that his belly or his feet or whatever he touches on the stone street much match its temperature. And it's just like I was digging the super sneaky stuff and all of like the gooey details that go with it. Like, I love stealth games, and for Kalam to have this very unique ability, maybe not even unique, but this ability to basically walk around undetected like a true assassin, you know? I just think of the Hitman games with like Hitman 47. I don't know if you've ever played those or not, but
No.
they're so much fun because they're like a giant puzzle piece, and going in and infiltrating these different compounds with all these different types of soldiers and different uniforms, and doing it without being seen, without changing a disguise, without being caught on camera. And the deaths either look like accidents or they never find them. Is just love that shit. So that's what I'm envisioning during the section when Kalam is basically edging his way forward.
I always liked just running in guns blazing and asking questions later. I wasn't much for stealth.
Yeah, I fucking love stealth games. But, you know, if you ever get around to playing The Last of Us, I mean, you can run in guns blazing, but the game limits you with ammunition on purpose. So you have to either be a really good shot, headshots only, or sneaking, I find, is the best way to infiltrate shit.
I just don't usually have the patience for that.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. I geek out about that shit. I don't know why, but so this resonated a lot with me when I was writing this section. I could just like envision how Kalam is going about it. Like I can envision the way that the way that he's thinking about it, and just the way that he's preparing for what he knows is inevitably coming.
Yeah, I'm glad you had that section then, just since you enjoyed it. Not that I wouldn't have enjoyed summarizing it, but since you like that type of stuff, I'm glad it worked out that way.
Yeah. The other thing that I thought was really cool is when Kalam is thinking about being potentially spotted, and then he has this moment of logic where he's just like, he clearly knows that this is a trap, right? I mean, Salk revealing himself before pushing him overboard, you know, sent alarms in his head, right? And I can only imagine what he was thinking while he was under the water. On top of like, I need to get my armor off. I need to get my, you know, in order to do that, I got to go unarmed, basically. I got to lose my weapons and I got to get to the surface and breathe. But just in that small amount of time, he's worked out Salk's plan. And this whole time, Salk was leading him to a trap.
But he knows it.
Now he does. I think that
right.
While he was on the ship, he was distracted, right? Like Salk used the advantage of distractions to keep Kalam's mind busy so that he wouldn't focus on what was happening, I guess. But yeah, going back to my logic statement, why spoil the game that's been set up for pleasure? Why prepare a maze just for Kalam to be killed before he can enter? I just thought that was so cool. Just that line was just really ominous, like precipice to it. The doubt, and then the logic, the stealth, the awareness. Like all of Kalam's senses are just hyper focused right now.
Well, he knows the game, and he's gonna play their game, and he's gonna beat them at it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Exactly. And we kind of get a little bit more revealed as we move on to these next sections about Kalam as a claw. And I'm wondering if it's these abilities that Salk was saying he admired him for, or if that was just, bullshit.
I guess I don't really know which way I lean on that.
I guess if you think about it, let me know. I guess you're on the fence at that point. I guess I am too, thinking about it, because, Salk's a devious bitch. So
he is.
I guess it's hard to say with any type of certainty if he actually does admire Kalam for what he did in the claw, or if that was just a way of keeping Kalam off guard.
I kind of feel like it might be some of both, because maybe he does admire him a little bit, but maybe it was more just supposed to be that distraction. I don't know.
Yeah. We'll just go with that. It's both. He used it to his advantage because he knew it would keep Kalam guessing.
Sure. I like that.
There we go. I guess the last thing that I had in this section was just the way that he just, without hesitation, without pause, just attacked this alcove like he knew that people were sitting in there, and just took them out before they could even expect it, before they can even react. Dead.
Yeah, he's pretty badass.
Yeah. What do you think about this hand link I'm assuming it has to do with, keeping claws in check, kind of like how Nil and Nether can talk to Coltane and other warlocks. I'm assuming it's like a similar function.
I was thinking that this is probably like an extreme case, but you know how like Murdral could link with Trollocs?
Yeah.
Something kind of like that, but obviously like, if you kill the one, the rest of the claws aren't dying, but I don't know, it must be something similar to that where he can know what they're doing or whatever, control them a little bit. I don't know.
Could be. That's
where my head went.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, I don't have any other thoughts for the very sneaky opening section here. If you're ready, I'm ready.
Yeah, it was very sneaky. My first section here. The Hands leader cocked his head, stepping out into the clear. Moments later, twin figures emerged from the alley. The leader murmured that blood had been spilled, and Topper Shelby. He quit talking as he heard a clicking noise. Changing his tune, he said now they would learn the details as their cloaked companions approached. The newcomer said, "The killer has arrived." Another spoke, saying he was about to pluck Topper's strand and was cut off, and the newcomer said, "Good. It was time he understood." The other was surprised, and both of the leader's companions fell to the ground. The leader himself took a punch to the face, his nose pushing up to his brain, and he crumpled to the ground. Kalam dropped down to whisper to the recently deceased, "I know you can hear me, Topper. 2 hands left. Run and hide. I'll still find you." He picked up his weapons, and the corpse gurgled a bloody laugh and spoke through the dead man's lips. "Welcome back, Kalam. 2 hands, you said? Not anymore, old friend." Kalam asked if he had scared him. The body replied that Salk Elon let him off too easily, and he would not be as kind. Kalam told Topper he knew where he was, and he was coming for him. There was a long silence before the corpse spoke a final time. "By all means, my friend."
I liked this section too. It was a nice little cap off to the previous section.
Yeah. So I didn't have a whole lot from here other than like the whole like dead corpse thing talking was pretty fucking cool. But like the newcomer, air quotes, that must have been Kalam, right? Like talking about himself, announcing himself. Is that how you took it?
Yeah, that's how I took it. Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought too. And then we did get a little bit of Topper in Gardens of the Moon, didn't we? And I thought we liked him.
Topper's the one who never changed his green clothes. Remember? We made fun of that. Yeah. He met with Paran, I believe, at the beginning of chapter 3 of Gardens of the Moon on the boat, and kind of told Paran about his mission. He also escorted Paran through the Imperial Warren, I believe, in the end of the first chapter, when they get to Lucene, and Paran's horse does something in Lucene's chamber. Yeah.
Not really ringing any bells.
Huh. Maybe you'll have to and listen to our episodes again.
Now that you mentioned the green clothes thing, I remember that now.
Yeah. But yeah, Topper was the one that was pretty present for the first maybe 3 chapters of Gardens of the Moon. And then he was mentioned or sprinkled throughout Gardens of the Moon, but that was pretty much the only introduction we got of him. It was just at the very beginning of the book.
Gotcha. But I'm sure we'll see more of them then.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't know if it was ever revealed that he was the commander of the Claws, but if it wasn't, this confirms that he's likely the commander of the Claw based on this interaction between him and Kalam via Dead Man's mouth.
I don't remember if that was told to us in Gardens of the Moon or not. Yeah, when Kalam's talking down to that dead body, I can just like picture him kneeling down. But then I just heard Liam Neeson's voice. That's like all I could hear.
I will find you. I have a very set of skills.
Yeah, like in Taken, exactly. That's what was going through my mind.
I could see that. I see that fitting for sure.
Now I don't know that he's necessarily, if this was going to be like a live action thing, I don't know if he's the one that plays him, but like just in that specific moment, like that was the impression that I got. That
type of like confidence and personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Nice. Again, really fucking ballsy section on Kalam's part here, but I think it just goes to accentuate his skills, right?
Oh yeah. You don't mess with him.
He's like the master of disguise.
He can get you.
Yeah. Well, cool. I don't have anything else for that. These first couple of sections are kind of they're linear. They're progressing the story as far as Kalam goes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready to move on here to your next behemoth of a section here.
Exactly. I think this is like the one chapter where I actually got more than one little itty bitty section. So,
yeah, it was.
The Imperial Warren was full of holes as claw after claw emerged from it. One such portal opened directly in a lone man's path. The figures announced their arrival with gasping breaths and splashed blood. No one had managed more than a step in Malaz City before their flesh began cooling in the night. Screams echoed down the city streets and alleys, and citizens, foolish enough to being in the streets, paid for their boldness with their lives. The Claw took no more chances. The game that Kalam had turned yet again. So basically, claws are flooding the city from, all corners of realms or wherever they have been, right? Kind of like an all hands on deck type of moment is what I'm imagining. And it seems like they're not taking any chances with anybody in the streets. So they're just fucking killing them, like indiscriminately.
It kind of reminds me of the assassins in Gardens of the Moon and their fight, where they're just like in the streets and the Tisti Andy are coming from above, killing them, and there's just fighting everywhere. Reminds me of that.
Yeah, I get that vibe. Yeah. I mean, Kalam, man, he's got, if this is the case, like he's got a challenge in front of him, because as that last sentence or that last line of the section says, the game that Kalam had turned yet again. And I hope that means, or I think that means that it turned not in Kalam's favor.
Right. Yeah. Like now he's got an uphill battle again.
Right. So I'm really curious as to see how this plays out. And with only 2 chapters left, I don't know how he's going to be able to manage, get to Deadhouse to hopefully meet up with Fiddler and crew. But yeah, I mean, Salk knows where he's going, where he's headed. So I would imagine that there's going to be an ambush in and around that area.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, that's one of the things, like, just the amount of pages we have left in this book, which is like, what, 40?
Yeah, 36, I think. I think the next chapter is 18 pages. And then the one after that is 18.
I just don't understand how this is going to get wrapped up, like any of it.
I don't think it's going to be. I think that what's going to happen is going to take place in, the House of Chains. I
have a hard time believing that we're going to have like that big cliffhangers just at the end of this book.
Well, I mean, maybe. I guess I don't know. I mean, there's 2 chapters left. A lot could happen. But you remember in Gardens of the Moon, we were reaching the end. And I think the last chapter before the end of the book, the chapter before the last chapter, we had Anomander's fight with the demon, with the Imperial demon. So, it literally just keeps punching you till the end.
Yeah, it does. It's going to be fast and furious, I'm sure.
Yeah, I guess I don't have any other thoughts for that section, so I'm ready to move on if you are, sir.
Yeah, we take a pretty sharp left turn here and get plugged into the Matrix, so
yep.
Hold on to your butts. The mosaic at their feet was endless, creating a pattern that was beyond comprehension. The strange floors spread out in every direction as far as the eye could see. Fiddler shouldered his crossbow and said at least they would see trouble coming from a league away. Pacing in circles, Poos hissed that, "You are all betraying the Azath. The jag belongs in a root web mound. That was the deal. That was the agreement. The scheme." He trailed off, then resumed in a different tone. "What agreement? Did Shadowthrone receive the answer to his query? Did the Azath reveal its ancient stony face? No. Silence was the reply. To all. My master could have pronounced his intention to defecate on the house's portal, and still the reply would not have changed. Silence." He continued on. "Well, it only seemed there was a consensus. No objections were voiced, were they? No, not at all. Certain assumptions were necessary, oh yes, very necessary. And in the end, there was a short victory, was there not? All but for that jag there in the trail's arms. He stopped talking momentarily as he was gathering his breath. Looking around, he said, "Gods, we are walking forever." Absalar said they should begin their journey. Fiddler agreed, but wondered which direction. Relic took a knee, inspecting the mosaic. They were the only source of light. Above them was only darkness. Each tile was no larger than a hand's width. The light they gave off pulsed in a steady rhythm. Absalar's father grunted. He said that the pattern in the tile seemed to be in a pattern of the Canny's coastline. He ran his finger down it and said it started on the Quan coast, down to Con, then up to Convor. Then there was also Cartool Island, and the center tile was Malaz Island. Fiddler was trying to understand how on this tile at their feet, most of the Quantali continent had been mapped, but even as he spoke, he could see the tile shaping itself into what Relic had said. He asked what was on the rest of them. Relic said they weren't consistent. There were breaks, other maps of other places. They're all jumbled, but he thought the scale was the same on all of them. Fiddler slowly stood up. A thought occurred and he spoke. But that means... His voice trailed off as he looked around himself, thinking to himself, every god in the abyss, are these all the realms? Every world, every place home to a house of Azath. Queen of Dreams, what power is this? Awestruck, Mappo said, here, in the warren of the Azath, you could go anywhere. Crocus asked if he was sure. Yeah, they have maps, but where's the gate? Where's the way in? There was silence amongst the travelers. Fiddler cleared his throat and asked if Crocus had an idea. Crocus shrugged and said, maps are maps. Maybe this one was just on the table, so to speak. Fiddler asked what he was suggesting. Crocus said just to ignore it. The only thing the tiles do now is show that every house in the pattern is a part of a grand scheme. But knowing that doesn't mean they can actually make sense of anything. The Azath is beyond even the gods. They can get lost in a game of suppositions, a mental game that gets them nowhere. Fiddler agreed, but that still didn't tell them what way to go. Absalar said maybe Poost had the right idea about things as he seemed to have disappeared. Crocus spun looking for the priest and cursed him when he was not around. Fiddler said that he had figured it out and not bothered to share it with the rest of the group. Mappo called out for them to wait. He had said to carry him down. He said it was hard to make out at first, but now he could see it clearly. Fiddler asked what he had found. Mappo beckoned them closer. He said it was almost impossible to see, though that didn't make much sense either. There was a gaping hole where Poost had simply fallen through. Kneeling down, Fiddler discovered the tiles were only an inch thick, and below them was nothing at all. Mappo asked if he thought this was the way out. Fiddler had no interest in finding out as he backed away, slowly, feeling as if he were on ice about to give way. Crocus said they should get moving as the hole may spread. Absalar asked about Poost. What if he was laying stuck on a ledge? Fiddler said he doubted it. From what he saw, the fool was falling into oblivion. He's sticking with his instincts on this. Absalar said it was a sad ending for the man, and she had almost become fond of him. Fiddler likened him to their own pet scorpion. Crocus led the way away from the hole. Had they waited for a few moments longer, they would have seen a yellow mist rising out of the darkness. After some time had passed, the mist began to disappear, and the mosaic once again was whole, as if it had always been that way.
I love this section. It kind of appealed to like my artistic side of space and diagrams and things like that. So
yeah, like I said at the beginning, it's just kind of a left turn. Like, I did not see this coming, and I read it and I'm like, what the hell did I just read?
Yeah. Well, it kind of makes me wonder if all of the houses of the Azath are like this, and they're all linked together in this way, shape, or form. Like this pattern is clearly the key. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, you're seeing a map of the whole world, maybe even more than that, and I mean, you recognize a small part of it.
Yeah, it's like, I guess you could call it purgatory, right? It's the space between space.
Yeah, this like, and it just I kind of feel like the theme we get from this chapter is just like insignificance, and this was kind of the one of the first things that or the first instances in this chapter where I felt that
Insignificant,
yeah.
like the Talan on the Solanda. Insignificant.
No, it was insufficient.
Damn it. Never mind. I was close.
You were. Just they kind of get a sense of how small they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a scary thing sometimes when you just take a step back and look and realize how big everything is. It's kind of a humbling feeling.
Well, and I mean, also the sense of the fact that everything off in the distance is just endless. There's no objects, there's no trees, there's no buildings, there's no grass. It just seems to be this like flat plane that like goes on forever in all directions.
Right.
So yeah, it was crazy.
How do you know which way to go?
Right, exactly. And I think that's their big question here too. Did you notice anything about Relic when he was talking about the Canese coast?
Nothing's coming to mind.
It started to, I guess what I imagined is the single tile was starting to match what Relic was saying about it. So I think that potentially Relic almost unintentionally could have taken them to the Canese coast, because I think the tiles on the floor go wherever your heart desires, I guess, is kind of the headcanon I'm getting around it.
Yeah, it wasn't like was it like a need thing or like what your heart wants? I guess those can be kind of similar. But I wonder where the hell Poost went.
Well, it's kind of like the Imperial Warren, right? Remember when Kalam and Manala and Keneb and their kids were all walking through the Imperial Warren, but he was having a hard time envisioning, Aaron because of all of his distractions. So I think it's just kind of a similar feel, but just a different look.
Well, it is. Now that you mention that, it is pretty similar. I mean, because if he's imagining home, that's kind of what's forming in front of his eyes.
Exactly. They're not executing. They're just imagining. They're not pushing the buttons, so to speak. But I guess to answer your question about Poost, is my guess is he went back to Shadowthrone.
I wonder if we'll see that in this book or not.
I don't know. I got a feeling, especially with some of the things that come later, that this is Poost's exit from this book.
Could be.
But I really hope that things come back to it. I loved Poost and his antics, and just even this whole like rabble that he has in the beginning of the section is like, I don't even know what you're talking about, dude. Like this agreement. So maybe we get some clarity on that towards the end. But it kind of seems like Poost is having a conversation with himself, like someone who potentially has like a serious case of schizophrenia, right? You've got multiple personality disorders and you're talking to yourself.
Right. And that was kind of my point there, where I just like here specifically, it seemed a lot like Gollum and Smeagol from Lord of the Rings. And so I kind of wonder if there isn't somebody else in him, whether it's schizophrenia or if it's, another wax witch type thing.
Yeah.
Just his quick change of tone is kind of what makes me think of that.
So kind of my theory around Quick Ben being Poost.
I don't think it's him. If there is somebody else in there, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, do you remember in Gardens of the Moon when we find out Quick Ben's real name, Dalat, right? Pretty sure that Amanus calls him a shapeshifter or something like that.
A shape-shifting bastard or something, I think.
Yeah, something like that. So, I don't know why it took me so long to remember that.
I don't think Quick Ben resides within Poost, but I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, Fiddler even says that Poost reminds him of Quick Ben, kind of midway through the book before they even went on their journey. to Tremolor. So the fact that in Quick Ben's conversation with Kalam on the boat, he seemed to be in like an airy desert type of environment. So it's probably super far-fetched, but I think that both of us can agree at surface level, there's definitely something up with Poost. And he maybe has, like an alter ego, or he's an alias to somebody else. What exactly that is, I don't think that we have any evidence at that point in time, but...
Right. I would agree with all that.
Because, I mean, we don't really get any type of answers for Kalam and Quick Ben's... I mean, we know what we want them to do, but is it possible that Quick Ben would want Icarium to be taken by Tremolor? Maybe there's an advantage to him for that happening for Quick Ben as well. Whatever type of prerogative he has, clearly it seems to be deal with, killing Lucine. So if maybe with Tremolor taking Icarium, maybe that for whatever reason imprisons the Jag Hut to be used at a later time. Maybe Quick Ben knows how to free people from the Azath. Maybe that was the deal. That's the bargain. You can have the Jag Hut, but I'm going to use him at a later date. I don't know.
I kind of got the impression from how it was talked about that if you destroyed an Azath, and I guess I don't know how you destroy it without killing everything it holds, but somehow it did sound like somehow you could free things within it.
So I don't know. Or maybe it is, maybe Quick Ben did want Icarium to not get taken by the Azath, and everything that we saw from Poost is just a show to make everybody feel like he's against Icarium, but really deep down he's actually rooting for him, type of situation. I don't know, man. There's still so much mystery with that. The whole Azath and Icarium thing. I understand its concept. I understand its core. I understand that Icarium didn't get taken by Tremolor, which isn't what Shadow Throne wanted, is what I'm gathering. But what outside of that box it means, I couldn't tell you. I don't have any speculations for that outside of the rambling I just went on.
Yeah, I don't either.
So, yeah, I feel like we've talked. I don't know. Do you feel like we've talked about all the major points on this section?
Yeah, I like how they compared Poost to a scorpion. Like,
yeah,
maybe you think it's kind of cute for some weird reason, but it's poisonous and dangerous.
Yeah. Do you find it a little bit odd that these guys are just they view Poost in that way though? I mean, clearly this guy is a scorpion. He's very dangerous, but yet he almost seems like they almost treat him as if he's just like this thing that they can pet whenever they want.
Yeah. I kind of get the sense they don't really know what to make of him. Like, what do you do with this guy? You just kind of let him go on his rants and ramble, and eventually he shuts up for a little bit.
I mean, I guess it's kind of like those friends that, are definitely not very smart when it comes to dangerous things, but it's still entertaining.
If you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough.
Right. Exactly. Like Jackass, right? All those guys in Jackass. Really stupid, but really entertaining.
For sure.
Not that Poost would ever be on an MTV movie, but,
Yeah, probably not.
That premise, I guess, is what I'm trying to describe.
Well, I think this whole section was just pretty wild, and it was a little challenging to kind of make sense of everything of it, but I mean, I don't think Poost is just falling into oblivion forever. So
I think that he's gone to wherever it is that he imagined, and the tiles opened up for him, and he's gone. But I think it's interesting that he doesn't share how to get out.
Yeah, he's just peace out.
And he clearly does it when everybody's focused on Relic and what he's kind of saying and describing about the tiles. Like, that is when I imagine Poos was like, peace.
Yeah. Yeah. Now's when I leave.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my next section, if you're ready, we can totally move on. I don't know if I'm finding it hard to think of things to talk about in that previous section. A lot of unknowns still, I think, but for the most part, it makes sense to me. Like, I understand what's happening.
Yeah. I mean, kind of. It's just, it seems like such a weird concept, like to have these, like, it's almost like a wormhole.
Right. Yeah.
In a fantasy book.
Right. This next section is really short. Again, I think it was weird that I got so many multiple shorter sections, but there's a lot of stuff in here that I thought was interesting. So probably spend more time talking about this section than it actually takes to read the section. But Mappo thinks to himself that the Deadhouse in Malaz City, in the heart of the Malazan Empire, there was nothing for them there. An explanation that made sense would challenge even his experienced creativity. Mappo continued to think that they must make their leave. Continuing his thoughts, he tells himself that this warren was far beyond him. Worse yet, his crimes are wounds that refuse to close. He cannot escape his cowardice. At the end here, his selfish desires are mocking his integrity and his vows. They all know it, they just don't speak it. How could friendship defeat such an opportunity? How could the comfort of familiarity rise up like a god? As change itself had become something demonic. I am a coward. The offer of freedom, the end of my vows, proved to be the greatest terror of it all. The simple truth, the journey they've walked for so long now had become their lives, itself a prison.
So I read this chapter twice, and obviously I didn't summarize this section, but it did not click in my head until you were reading it that he was like making the choice to leave, which kind of makes more sense now for my next section.
Yes. This is when he ducks out,
like Poost.
Right, yes. But unfortunately, I'm assuming based on the next section that Mappo and Icarium were leading the pack. They were in front of everyone else.
Right.
Yeah. When he's thinking to himself, and this whole section is like written as if it's a thought. There's no interaction. It's all inside Mappo's head. And I think when he's thinking about an explanation around the Malaz City has nothing for them is something that would challenge his experienced creativity. It tells me that Mappo can't even comprehend an explanation. He can't even come up with a reason to tell the group that Malaz City has nothing for them. And even more so, his desire to leave. Like that thought, he can't, in all of his experienced creativity, as it was said, come up with a reason to tell the guys why he's out. It kind of seems like the way that I got it, it was like a gut feeling that you can't explain. Like you gotta go. You can't explain it. Yeah. I gotta go, is where my thought was.
That would be a hard thing to try to explain to somebody. Be like, I don't know what to tell you. I have to leave now. Because obviously they're going to try and stop you. Be like, no, like, wait, let's talk about this. Let's figure it out. You're like, I can't do that. I need to go.
Right, exactly. And I think that Mappo may not have an explanation, but I think we as the readers do get an explanation. And I think that, and it was really cool. I just love that we get an inside view of his mind. And he's really conflicted between his doubts and his choices, right? So the part where he talks about how could friendship defeat such an opportunity, he kind of plays off the confliction here of my previous statement. But an example of him doubting his choices, he's wondering how his friendship with Icarium could defeat his opportunity to free himself from his lifelong vow, i.e. getting rid of Icarium, right? He had an opportunity to be free of what I'm assuming he thinks is a little bit of a burden at this point, right? Like he has no freedom. He vowed to follow Icarium around till the sun dies out or whatever. And he had an opportunity in Tremolor to be free of that.
And he didn't do it.
And he didn't do it, which I think is sad because as it, the section ended, he basically says that being with him itself is a prison. So it's one of those things where, like, do you give your, I guess, best friend at this point up to Tremolor to be in prison forever, but yet you get set free? Or do you both walk in prison together?
Well, we know what Icarium told him. Icarium told him to let him go,
Right.
To go, and told him to go be free, but maybe he doesn't really understand what would be happening to himself.
Or the consequences of that, right?
Right, I guess, how guilty would, Mappo would probably feel pretty guilty, I would think.
Well, and it says here, I think that he was just afraid to do it. He's afraid to lose Icarium's friendship. And it was just way too much for him to be able to make that decision. Like, do I be selfish? Like, that's scary. Or do I lose a friend?
Yeah, that's, I think, guilt comes in with that fear, I think. I mean, I guess I kind of view that as one and the same in this instance.
Yeah. So I think as cool as all of this was, I feel really bad for Mappo. And I know that I've stated that many times in previous episodes, but I feel like this was the nail that hit, or the nail that, whatever the saying is. I don't even fucking know.
Hammerschlagen.
Right. Hit the nail on the head, I guess is what I'm saying. I feel like this is kind of the culmination of all of Mappo and Icarium's motivations and all of like his goals and doubts. Like all the stuff that we kind of see build up between Icarium and Mappo, I feel is like, this is the zenith of that. This is where we get an explanation to all of that. Everything makes so much sense, like in a kind of a finality way of thinking when I read this section.
Gotcha.
But where they go, I don't know, man. I mean, I would really hate to think that this is where Mappo and Icarium end. I'm hoping that we'll get more of them in later books, but like Poost, I think this is where they're like, peace out for this book. I don't think they're going to be coming back for this book. I think that they'll maybe be talked about, in what I would imagine Kalam and Fiddler, if they do ever meet up, kind of talk about their journeys.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you on that.
But outside of that, I don't have anything else for you.
All right. We're cruising along pretty good here.
Yeah, we are.
All right. Absalar leapt forward, her fingers brushing shoulder, then braids, then nothing. Her momentum carried her forward to where Mappo and Icarium were moments ago. She fell into darkness. Crocus grabbed her by the ankles. He was also pulled towards the hole in the tiles before the fisherman's arms grasped him and anchored him. Together they drug Absalar from the edge of the pit. Just beyond stood Fiddler. His cry had been the first indication of trouble. "They're gone! They fell through! There was no warning, Fid, nothing at all," yelled Crocus. Fiddler cursed himself, thinking that they were all intruders here, and he had heard of warrens that held no air, assured death for mortals that entered. He thought there was a certain amount of arrogance, thinking that every realm would bow to human needs. There were no laws demanding the environment accommodate them. He fought the grief of the two he had come to call friends and wondered who would be next. He called the other three to him and said they would tie themselves to each other. If one went through, then the other would pull them back up, or they'd all go through. Tied together, they kept walking. After about 1,000 paces, they felt a wind stir. The first they had felt here. Something passed overhead. It was big. Fiddler scrambled for his crossbow. It was 3 dragons that flew over them. They paid the humans no mind. Absalar said it was foolish of them to assume they were the only ones in the warren. Crocus said he had seen bigger. Fiddler managed to chuckle and said he knew he had. The dragons were almost to the horizon when they turned as one and plunged into the tiles and through them. Everyone was silent for a short time before Relic said, apparently that taught them something. Fiddler thought that you went through when you get to where you're going, even if you're not ready for it. Fiddler said they would keep moving until they get to wherever they were going. Crocus spoke up, saying Mappo and Icarium were lost, not dead. Absalar said the same was true of Poost. Crocus said they had to take the good with the bad. Fiddler had wondered where the dragons were going. They were a good reminder that the world was a big place and it didn't care about individual goals. The journey they had undertaken was really only the smallest of steps, nothing more important than the struggles of a termite. The world lives on, beyond us. As he looked out and saw the tiles stretch out into forever, he felt smaller and smaller, insignificant. He thought they were all lone souls. It pays to know humility, lest the delusion of control, of mastery, overwhelms. And indeed, we seem as a species prone to that delusion again and ever again.
What a powerful section.
Yeah, that's, I know I kind of talked about, the theme for this chapter seemed to be insignificance, and it just kind of comes right out and says it in this section. But yeah, you get 3 massive dragons. Where the heck are they going? The dragons, I'd have to think they knew that there were humans there, but they didn't give a shit about them, Just, they weren't even worth the bother of lighting them up, with their dragon fire.
Well, do you think that the dragons had a sense of purpose? Would that be the reason that they just ignored these guys? Is just they had somewhere to be?
Yeah, but how long they flew right over them. So how long would it take just to flame them? 0 time at all. And I don't feel like they thought they mattered enough to even waste the time on that.
I don't know. I guess we don't know enough about dragons' relationships with humans, really, because they haven't really done anything to them. It's always been dragons fighting Jaghuts or soul takens. Or not soul takens, but demons. Imperial demons.
You look at just about any other fantasy series that has dragons in it, and for the most part, unless you are the dragon rider or owner or whatever, if you're around a dragon, seems like it's probably going to try to kill you.
So it's just this maybe the author's way of avoiding a common trope, which I appreciate, by the way.
Maybe. Yeah, it could be. But it's like you said, they obviously they had somewhere to be. They were going there, but I don't think it wouldn't have hindered them any to just torch them.
Fair. Yeah, I guess I don't know. You're right, but why they didn't? I would assume that 1, they just had more important things to do, even though they could have quickly incinerated them all, or maybe it has something to do with Absalar, right? Maybe they detect Dancer's memories or something, and yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it seemed interesting to me that they didn't even bother with the people.
Right. So I guess here's my question: is I know that in the previous section we know that Mappo and Icarium are dipping out, and in this section it kind of makes it seem like you go when you get there, as far as Crocus is concerned, which kind of contradicts what we talked about when we were first introduced to the tiles, and you kind of, the heart's desire thing. But it also kind of makes sense at the same time that they are maybe even a little bit related. But my question is it just happenstance that Mappo and Icarium, their desire was right in front of everyone else and no one saw it coming? Or do you think that was intentional? Mappo is just thinking about where he wants to go, hole opens up and poof. Or do you think it is the tiles knew where he wanted to go because of all of his thoughts that we got in the previous section, and poof, there he's gone?
The second one, I think, because I feel like Mappo probably, if he could have had a choice, he probably would have rather been at the back, and then, if they drop out silently, then nobody notices, right? I don't feel like he would have wanted to draw attention like this by being in the front and then dipping out like that.
So do you think that this Warren just takes you to wherever you're going or wherever you want to go? I would feel like that's the case. But where do you think that would be for Mappo? Do you think that would be back in his Troll Town? Do you think he's going to, I guess, talk to the Nameless Ones?
I don't know.
Like, is that on the continent of Seven Cities, or is he going somewhere else?
I have no clue where they went, and if there was hints dropped along the way, then clearly we didn't pick him up.
True. Fair enough. Yeah. Definitely a section to make you think. And I'm kind of sad. I'm sad that Mappo and Akarium are out. I would imagine that they were going to take us right up to the end, but that, alas, did not happen.
No, it did not.
So maybe the epilogue will have some answers, because it's like, what, one page? So yeah. Maybe it'll talk about where they ended up briefly and then leave us on a cliffhanger. Yeah, man. I don't have anything else to say about that one. I don't know if you do.
No, I think we can move on here.
All right. This one's definitely a little longer, but there's a lot of stuff in here. So, yeah. The sounds of triumph from Corbelow Dom's army drifted over the walls of Erin. Within the city was a broad space, generally used as a caravan staging area, was filled with refugees. The refugees didn't belong there, but there were more pressing needs, as the refugees needed water and food and medical attention. Commander Blistig had set his garrison to those efforts. Other tensions filled the air, though, as Duiker thought to himself that Coltane's final sacrifice could have been avoided, as they could have saved him, if not for that coward commanding them. Two powerful honors had clashed: the duty to save the lives of fellow soldiers and the discipline of the Malazan command structure. From that collision, 10,000 highly trained soldiers stood broken. Down in the throng of refugees, Duiker wandered aimlessly. Blurred faces murmured meaningless words, offered the historian words they hoped would soothe him. Nil and Nether had been taken by the Wiccan youths and now protected them. Countless refugees had been saved from Hood's grasp, while Hood himself reached for those souls as healers tried to mend and heal those lives. Duiker found his own oblivion deep within himself. Words occasionally seeped through from soldiers telling him information they thought he'd want to hear. The caution in their voices was not needed, for the information was stripped of feeling. Duiker was beyond hurting. A Wiccan youth named Tamol was explaining to Duiker that the Solanda hadn't made it yet, and Tavor's fleet was less than a week away. Corbolow's Dam was likely to mount a siege, and Shaik was on her way from Raraku, leading an army twice the size of Dom's. A plan was in the air to reap vengeance. Blinking, Duiker tried to focus on the figure in front of him, but the thought of everything he'd been through sent him reeling in his mind. Too much pain was embedded in those memories. He stepped back. The figure reached out and grabbed his shirt and pulled the historian closer. Blistig was able to snap Duiker back to reality and is urgently trying to explain that their only reports of the events that have taken place have come from the nobleman Nethpara. We need a soldier's account of the events that transpired. Do you understand, damn you? Duiker, coming out of his trance, asked Blistig what was going on. Blistig's face twisted as he explained to the historian that somehow Malik Rel had gotten to the High Fist. We are going to strike at Dom in less than an hour's time. Blistig pleads to Duiker as to how many Dom has in his army. Duiker gives an unreliable answer. Blistig tells him to think, so hopefully they knock out Dom's army before Shaik arrives. Duiker snaps and tells him that he doesn't know, as their army seemed to grow with every Hood-cursed league. Blistig reveals that Nethpara guesses just under 10,000, and he's also laying the deaths of thousands of innocent refugees at Coltane's feet. Duiker was in disbelief and called Nethpara a fool. Blistig explains that without Duiker's story, that virgin Nethpara spewed will win the day. It's already spread through the ranks, and the will for vengeance is decaying amongst the soldiers. Duiker tells Blistig where Nethpara was. Blistig said that he'd been with Pormqual and Rel for the last 2 hours. Duiker told the captain to take him there. A succession of horns blew, and they both looked at the sky. Seeing that light was starting to come in, Blistig said that it might already be too late, Duiker said to take him to Rel and the High Fist anyway. As they made their way through the throng of refugees, Blistig explains that he's to defend the city, but Pormqual has conscripted soldiers from his garrison to go outside the walls. He's been left with a mere 300 to defend the walls of Aran, and with the Red Blades being under arrest. The historian cut him off to ask why they'd been arrested. Blistig responded by saying that because they were Seven Cities' blood, the High Fist didn't trust them. Duiker calls the High Fist a fool, as the Red Blades were the most loyal to the Empire. The captain agreed and said that his opinion on the matter was worthless. Duiker said that his had better not be. Blistig turned to ask him if he supported the High Fist's order to attack. Duiker said that he did not. It was wiser to wait until Tavor arrived, to allow Dom's army to throw themselves at these fortified walls. Blistig adds on that they could cut the Apocalypse army to pieces, but could you convince the High Fist of this? They finally found the High Fist. He was seated on top of a war horse. He had on the most elegant of armor, not really functional either. Rel was seated on a horse next to the High Fist. Officers mounted and on foot surrounded the pair. In that group, Duiker caught sight of Pulyik, Alar, and Nethpara. Red with rage, he increased his pace to the two noblemen. Blistig caught the historian's arm and told him to save that for later, as they have more pressing issues to attend to. Trembling with rage, Duiker forced it back. Blistig is heard that the High Fist has seen them. Blistig is heard saying that the High Fist has seen them. Pormqual's gaze was cold on the historian. Pormqual said that his arrival was timely, as there are two tasks that require his assistance. Duiker starts to talk before Pormqual interrupts him. The High Fist tells Duiker that if he's interrupted again, he'll cut the historian's tongue out. He paused and then finished what he was going to say. First of all, Duiker is to accompany them to the battle, and he's to witness the proper means of dealing with Dom. The selling of innocent refugees' lives is not a bargain he's willing to make, nor will there be a repeat of the earlier tragedies, earlier crimes of treason. He continues on to say that when they've slaughtered Dom and his armies, they shall attend to Duiker's arrest, along with Nil and Nether, as they were the last of Coltane's horrific command. He gestured, and an aide brought Duiker his horse. He tells Blistig to prepare his soldiers for rear guard duty and gives specific instructions on what to do. Duiker could not help but notice Malgrel's satisfied smile. He thought to himself about a past conversation. Not a man to cross, are you, Rel? In silence, he mounted his horse. Once out of the city, the cavalry would immediately part in a sweeping motion intended to surround Dom's camp, while the infantry would form a close group and march on the enemy position. Blistig had left, and Duiker stood facing the gate, watching the mass of soldiers. His name is called out. He turned to see Nethpara, who was smiling up at him. The nobleman tells the historian that he should have treated him with more respect. Nethpara didn't see Duiker slip his boot from the stirrup. Nethpara continued to rant on about the things Duiker did to him when Duiker cut him off and told him that he had one last insult for the noble. He kicked the noble right in his flabby throat. His trachea crumbled inward. His head snapped back with a crunching sound. Nethpara fell backwards and landed heavily on the stones, his eyes staring up, unseeing the pale sky. Pulyik Alar shrieked. Soldiers closed in all around the historian. He said that by all means he welcomed an end to this. Pormqual, filled with rage, said that the historian wouldn't be so fortunate. Duiker sneered at the High Fist and said that he had already convicted him of murder, so what's one more? Duiker turned his gaze to Rel and told him to come closer, as his life is still incomplete. The historian did not notice, nor did anyone else, but a captain of Blistig's garrison had arrived. But when the captain heard Duiker call Rel Gistel, he hesitated. His eyes widened, and he took a step back. The gates opened just then, and the mass of soldiers and cavalry poured through. Keneb took another step back, that lone word echoing in his mind. He knew that word from somewhere, even though it eluded him. Alarms, regardless, were blaring in his mind. A voice within him said that he needed to find Blistig. He did not know why, but it was imperative. He had run out of time as the army surged toward the gate. The orders had been given, and it was unstoppable. Keneb took another step back, stepping over the body of Nethpara, spinning around, and then ran. 60 paces away, Keneb's mind was suddenly flooded with memory when he had last heard the word Gistel. I know that I gotta say this is probably my favorite section of this chapter.
Yeah?
Yeah, because at the beginning here, Duiker, he's just aimlessly in this haze, like people trying to speak to him, give him information, but he's like so zoned out to interactions, so zoned out to the sights and sounds, and all he can focus on is like what's in his head. And it was just so powerful to envision. And, I can almost relate to the numbness of just thoughts vomiting in your head, and everything else around you takes a back seat to those thoughts, So it's just, he's broken at this point. Like he has no faith in Pormqual. He's finally broken. He broke.
I mean, did anybody ever have faith in Pormqual though?
No, from what we heard, no. But, it's like, when you hear things, but you don't automatically believe that it's true, like there's still a hint of like doubt. And then when you finally meet the bastard and he's an asshole and a dick, like it makes all of what you heard and read so far sink in. But at the time you didn't want to believe it because you haven't met him yet,
Yeah. I agree. I mean, Duiker's definitely broken.
He definitely is. Blistig, when he's telling him all this stuff about, hey, Nethpara's given his side of the story already. We need your account because that sounded like some bullshit to me. I just imagine him like shaking the shit out of Duiker, and it was funny because as I read this line in my head, I was like, this can't be good. We know how blown up Nethpara would explain all these events, right? Like he has to fabricate what actually happened.
Yeah. I didn't like Nethpara. Glad he's dead.
Yeah. He's a slippery asshole. And I remember reading this for the first time after that conversation where Blistig is like, yeah, Nethpara gave his account. We need yours. Like, I just remembered, like, I really hope he gets what he deserves. And he does. Yeah. Brutally.
Yeah, he does. I was going to ask do you think like Rel had some sort of like mind control over Pormqual? Because like nothing's really changed. Dom's still got the same amount of soldiers out there, right?
Yeah.
Now Coltane's just not out there fighting for his life. You let him die, but you couldn't be convinced to go out there and save him. But now you're convinced you're going to go out there and crush them? Like what? It makes no sense.
You could be right. I don't know what a Gistel priest is. Like that's never been explained in this book, but maybe.
Right.
Also, remember the book of Dryjana. What if Rel, Pearl, and Mebra are all connected? Because Rel is in Aaron. He probably told Pormqual to send everything on a boat, which is sinking in Malaz Bay right now. So maybe not. I don't know.
I don't understand how Pormqual could be this incompetent to be told, no, those guys are out there fighting. Like, we could send some guys out there and save them, to now being like, oh, well, now all our guys are dead. But now if we go out there and fight them, you'll kick their ass. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know. My guess is that behind the scenes, Rel probably had a conversation with the nobleman and used it to his advantage. I don't know if I necessarily can get on board with the sorcery thing because it was said to be rare, like rare. I don't want to take away from the word rare by giving it to, anybody that it conveniently fits to. But
well, even if it's not sorcery, and I guess I'm not convinced it is. How did somebody even just through spoken word convince him to not help? Because any competent commander, like is going to at least make an effort. And if it's, if things are just that bad, then I guess they're that bad where you can't, if you had like 50 guys left in Aaron or something, like, sure, you're probably not going to send them out, but you got 10,000. You got 10,000 guys. I guess we don't really know how many Dom has got, but even if you send out 5,000, should be enough to get Coltane back in. And then you have a competent leader who I feel like he probably wouldn't really want to hole up in a building and like go through a siege, I guess. But I don't know. I don't know how Pormqual is this stupid.
Well, I think Rel is supposed to be his advisor, if I'm remembering correctly from all the way at the beginning of the book. But also think about Corbulo Dom is celebrating right now. So I think the difference between scenarios is that Corbulo Dom was like actively slaughtering Coltane and crew, and that would be enough for Pormqual to just be all like, nope, they're expecting us. We're just going to let it happen because it's not worth it. Listening to Rel probably. And then now Rel has maybe put it in his idea that like, oh, Corbulo Dom is celebrating. Can't you hear him? Like, we should attack when they're unexpected. I
don't know. It's just still doesn't make sense to me because what kind of military training does Rel have then to be advising a high fist?
Well, isn't he from Lacine's hand himself?
Maybe. I guess I don't remember, but
I feel like maybe, I don't know. I guess I don't remember that far back, but I feel like Rel was maybe self-appointed or something like that.
It's just suspicious to me. I want a bumper sticker that says Pormqual's an idiot or something.
Mm-hmm. But also, if you remember about Malik Rel, at the beginning of the book, he got his reputation from getting where he is because he always got what he wanted. And no matter who crossed him, he would always get what he wanted. So maybe that plays into your theory about having the ability to manipulate minds like Pearl did. But, Duiker even has that thought about himself, like when Malik Rel has got that satisfied smile on his face after he gives instructions to Blistig. Duiker couldn't help but notice Malik Rel's satisfied smile. And it reminded him of the past conversation. And he was just like, in his head, he's like, not a man to cross, are you, Rel? Which ties us back into the beginning of the book. So I think that was like the second chapter. So, yeah, I guess in whatever we can explain it, I guess. And Rel just gets what he wants.
Suspicious to me.
Yep. Well, I mean, that plays out later. So,
yeah.
When Nethpara gets his fucking throat kicked in, I was just like, yes, fuck that fucker. When I read that, it was great. It's nice to see him get what he deserves.
Yeah. The only thing that would have made it better is if he suffocated because his trachea was collapsed instead of dying instantly.
Yeah. Nethpara is the reason that Duiker gets in the situation that he's in. It's Nethpara's story that makes Pormqual want to arrest him after he slaughters Dom, along with Nil and Nether, because of the bullshit way that Nethpara explained everything. And that he's telling him specifically about the Vathar River, because that is where the most refugees took. The most refugees died. And the fact that Nethpara couldn't get anything that they wanted from Coltane ignoring them, giving their treaties back with shit on them. Like, all of that came to bite Duiker and Coltane in the ass.
I feel like it's not very hard to call out that, because Duiker would be like, look, if we just wanted to fuck over the refugees, we would have just ran from the beginning and left them behind to be slaughtered immediately.
Right.
But we didn't do that. Like, we got a bunch of them to here. So, clearly we weren't sacrificing them, or however Nethpara worded it,
But also Nethpara isn't he's not telling what should be told, right? Like, Coltane's whole last stand was to get the refugees safely to Aaron while they stayed behind and slowed Dom down.
Right. I'm just saying it I feel like it should be easy to dispute Nethpara's claims.
Right. But Duiker never got that chance. He never got that chance because he was so enthralled with how hurt he was and how broken he is.
I don't think Pormqual would have listened to it anyways, but
You don't think so?
No, because he's a dipshit. He's an idiot.
Right. Well, I think Duiker tries to explain it, but then he's told to shut up. And if he interrupts again, he's going to get his tongue cut out.
Right. All that does is tell me that it didn't matter what he said. Pormqual wasn't buying it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's just, and, you know, to your point, Duiker realizes that and then just gets super obstinate with the High Fist as well as Rel. And Duiker's just like, hey, fuck it. What's one more? Come over here, Rel. Like, let me kick your ass too. Let me fucking kick you in the throat.
Yeah.
So I super enjoyed that defiance because of Rel, because of the High Fist and his incompetence. Like, it's nice to see Duiker just like stand up for himself, even though like he's already been labeled a murderer, you know?
Yeah.
The only other thing that I have in this section is the part with Keneb. And I know that we talked a little bit about this behind the scenes, or, you know, not even behind the scenes, but, you know, off camera. But Keneb is flooded with the memory of when he last heard the word Gistel. And he's recalling a conversation with Kalam when Kalam had asked Keneb if he'd ever heard of a Gistel priest before. Keneb didn't know, but Kalam explained that he'd been told by soldiers of the apocalypse that they had a Gistel priest at Aaron. And Kalam explained that they talked about the Gistel as if it was like a shaved knuckle. That was all the way back in chapter 9.
Going way back.
Yeah, way back when Kalam took out those group of apocalypse soldiers that were being naughty.
Yeah, to put it mildly.
So it was nice to have that like finalized and finished off. And that definitely comes to play in these next 3 sections. With that, that's all I had for that section. I don't know if you have anything else to add to it, but I love the interactions. I love Duiker's defiance, you know, just how much I can relate to him and his zone out type of thing at the beginning of the chapter. And just, I didn't expect Nethpara to be able to his word to win the day. You know, I was not prepared for that. And everything just went south as I kept reading.
Yeah, it did. Well, should I take my section here?
Take her away.
All right. Duiker rode with the mounted officers out onto the plain. Dom's army seemed to be in a full-fledged panic, though he noticed that they still held their weapons as they fled back over the mound. The High Fist's cavalry rode hard on either side, outrunning the foot soldiers as they raced to completely encircle the foot, while the High Fist's legions marched at double time, silent and determined. They had no hope of catching the fleeing soldiers until the cavalry had completed their circle. Malik Rel shouted over to Pormqual that this is exactly as he predicted. It was a rout. Pormqual laughed, saying they would not escape as he pitched back and forth in his saddle. Duiker thought the man could barely ride. The chase took them over the barrow where the 7th and Wickens had died. Duiker could not help but look at the bodies, looking for faces he recognized. Pormqual, from time to time, had slowed their chase so as to not get too far ahead of the infantry. The cavalry was somewhere ahead and had not returned yet. The High Fist and the army had chased soldiers into a basin where they were packed in and had started climbing up the other side. Pormqual said the encirclement was complete as he pointed to the dust. Duiker frowned and heard the sounds of battle in the distance. They faded off while the rising dust grew thicker. As the infantry marched into the basin, Duiker thought something was wrong. The fleeing soldiers had made it to the top of the basin on all sides but the south, though they were not panicked now. They slowed, readied their weapons, and turned around. The dust went higher and higher. Behind the soldiers, then riders appeared. Not Pormqual's cavalry, but tribal riders. The foot soldiers filled in the ranks behind them. Duiker spun to look behind, 7 cities cavalry lined the south, cutting them off. He thought they rode into the simplest trap, and now Aaron was defenseless. Pormqual yelled at Malik, asking what had happened. The priest said it was Duiker's fault, calling it treachery and part of the bargain made with Nethpara, and claimed he'd been working with Corbolo Dam. Pormqual was in terror, saying the opposing forces numbered in the tens of thousands, and they will be annihilated, and then to kill Duiker. Malik Rel begged him to wait, saying he would extract a worthy punishment. Pormqual complied and asked what they should do. Rel said he saw riders under a white flag. He would see what Dom proposed. They had nothing to lose at this point. Pormqual agreed, as he could not think, and begged Rel to speak with them. The Gistal priest agreed and headed to the parley. It was over in a minute. Duiker told the High Fist they could break through the south, a fighting withdrawal back to the gates of the city. Pormqual called him a traitor and told him to shut up. Rel arrived back and said that Dom had had enough bloodshed, and the slaughter from yesterday had him feeling ill. Bullshit. Pormqual wanted to know what had been proposed. Rel said they needed to lay down their weapons and then withdraw into a compact circle at the center of the basin. They will be prisoners of war and treated with mercy, while he and Pormqual would be hostages to be exchanged once Tavor arrived. They had no choice. Duiker knew he could not change his mind. He dismounted from his horse and removed the saddle. Rel asked what he was doing. Duiker told him freeing his horse. The enemy wouldn't bother with it as it was too worn out, so it would make its way back to the city. Rel turned away from Duiker to Pormqual and said they awaited their reply. Duiker told his horse to take care and slapped it on the rear end, sending it on its way. Pormqual said he didn't have a choice. Unlike Coltane, he must consider his soldiers. Their lives, they were worth everything, and peace would sooner or later return to the land. Rel said thousands of family members will bless his name with this decision, while if he chooses to fight, his name would be cursed for all eternity. Pormqual said he could not have that. He ordered the surrender and withdraw. Duiker watched the 4 captains in silence as they saluted and rode off to collect the weapons. Duiker turned away. "You stupid idiot." Just reading this pissed me off because I was like, it just goes from bad to worse. Like, just a complete fucking moron.
Yep. But this is where, Keneb's recalling of Kalam's conversation and the shaved knuckle really starts to take form. Like Corbolo Dam was not retreating. They were setting up for the trap. And Rel led them right into it because he's a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
Like, Rel has played Pormqual this entire time. Rel is probably the reason why Pormqual never sent reinforcements to help Coltane. Like, think about it. Remember all of those conversations about Pormqual potentially helping them out, meeting them there. Ubard, right? All of that stuff. That was all Rel telling Pormqual not to do it.
I agree, but it still does not explain to me how Pormqual is so fucking dumb.
Yep. So,
maybe there's not an answer there for us, but even if he came from the Empress, unless, I don't know, maybe this is what he was telling him. The Empress says don't do anything until Tavor gets there. Maybe that was the case, but I don't know. I feel like, there's times where any good leader is going to go against the grain, even if it's going to get him in trouble, if it's going to save people, Well,
I think that's what he thinks is going to happen, especially when it comes to the surrender, right? I mean, they didn't parlay for a minute. They had this pre-planned out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Rel walked up there and he's like, "Hey, what's up, guys? Look how stupid this guy is. This worked perfectly. I'm going to go back and tell him we need to surrender."
Exactly. And Duiker knows it too. Duiker is just like, "Yep, cool. Well, here it is. Here's the fucking end. Like, goodbye, horse." Yeah.
Yep. I don't know. Pormqual pisses me off so bad. Like, it is not even a real person, but like, I'm so pissed off. Like, and it's not like I'm in the military. Like, I'm some freaking genius, but like, I'm not dumb enough that, like, okay, I could be dumb enough to get played into this trap. Like, for sure I could. But I wouldn't be like, yeah, let's chuck all our swords to the edge of the circle and think I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that dumb. There's 10,000 people out there. You brought 99.9% of your troops out there and you killed them all. If you're going to kill them, you may as well fight and kill some of them too. Instead, you just sacrificed them.
Well,
for
the
nothing.
smarter play would have been, as Duiker was talking to Blistig in the previous section, wait for Tavor, because she was like, I think it was said it was like a week away from being there. And in the meantime, let Corbulo Dom exhaust himself by trying to siege the city.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't go out there. Like, you didn't do it in the first place, so why are you doing it now? Like,
I think that Rel has just positioned himself to almost be like an adjunct of the Empress. I know that when he was in Hissar at the beginning of the chapter or the beginning of the book, you know, everyone kind of questions how Rel does what he does. And I think that he's positioned himself to kind of speak on behalf of Lucine, right? And so I think Pormqual is just doing his duty, and Malik Rel is purely taking advantage of that position. He's got the believability. He's got Pormqual believing that he's a spokesman for Lucine. And so therefore Pormqual knows that if he listens, he's following orders. But Rel has ulterior motives, clearly.
oh, yeah, I don't know. I feel like the High Fist should outrank everybody except for
Lucine.
you know, exactly. So it's just, I'm mad.
Yeah, I'm pretty irritated about it too.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, I didn't have a lot to talk about there other than just
How pissed you were.
how mad Pormqual makes me, and like just I don't remember if I already said this, but yeah, just reading this, it's just like your stomach sank. You're like, oh God, like it's just getting worse.
And it doesn't get better either.
Nope, it continues to get worse.
Well, I guess should we continue on? Because I feel like these last three sections are pretty much tied together at this point.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right, this is my last section. The disarming took close to an hour. The Malazan soldiers giving up their weapons in silence. Those weapons were piled on the ground. The soldiers then made their way inward in the basin center. Tribal horse warriors then rode down and collected the arms. 20 minutes later, an army of 10,000 Malazan crowded the basin. Corbulo Dom broke from his vanguard position and rode down toward the High Fist position. Duiker stared at the group. He saw Kamistrelo, a handful of war chiefs, and then Corbulo Dom himself. He was smiling before reining himself in with his companions before the High Fist and Rel. He said, "Well done," his eyes on the priest. Rel dismounted and stepped forward and bowed. He said, "I deliver you High Fist Pormqual and his 10,000. He added that he also delivered the city of Erin in the name of Shaik. Chuckling, Duiker told Rel that he was wrong. Rel faced the historian. Duiker explained that Rel hadn't delivered Erin. Rel asked what claims the old man made now. Duiker explained that he's surprised that the Gistel didn't notice, probably because he was too busy gloating. He explained to Rel to take a look around, especially to the company to the south. Rel paled and then said, "Blistig." Blistig! Kind of an Alpha from fucking Power Rangers. Zora! Rel jerked forward and slapped the cheek of Duiker. He fell hard to the ground and felt something shatter against his chest. He pushed himself up, blood streaming down his lacerated face. Looking down at the ground, he expected to see fragments of glass, but there wasn't any. The thong around his neck was empty, though. Hands gripped him and pulled him up to take him to face Malk Rel. Rel was trembling with anger still, and started to say that the historian's death will be... He was cut off by Dom, who called for silence. Corbulo then asked Duiker if he was the historian that rode with Coltane. Duker said that he did. Dom asked if he was a soldier. Duker defiantly said that if Dom said so. Corbolo said that yes, he does say so. And so the historian shall die along with these soldiers, in a manner no different. Duker responded that Dom meant to slaughter 10,000 unarmed men and women. Dom responded by explaining that he meant to cripple Tavor before she even sets foot on this continent. He wants to make her so angry she can't think. Duker took another shot at Dom's character. He shrugged at this and said that Duker, a soldier of Coltain's army, should now join the others. Dom turned to Rel and said that his mercy does not extend to the soldier that stole Coltain from their pleasure. Where is he? Rel explained that, alas, that soldier went missing, and when a search was attempted, he could not be found. Dom expressed his disappointment at hearing this. Pormquald is heard calling out to Dom, asking for him to explain, as the High Fist didn't understand. Dom said that clearly he didn't, and then asked Rel if the priest had any particular fate for the High Fist. Rel said that he didn't, and the High Fist was Dom's to do whatever he wanted with. Dom said that he could not grant him the dignified sacrifice that he had in mind for the soldiers. Corbolo Dom sighed and then gestured with one hand. A war chief's tulwar flashed behind the High Fist, severing his head from his body. The war horse bolted in alarm and broke through the circle of soldiers. The horse galloped down among the unarmed soldiers, carrying the headless burden into their midst. The High Fist corpse rode in the saddle with a grace not matched in life. Hands reached up to slow the horse, and his body slid to one side, falling into waiting arms. It may have been Duker's imagination, but he thought he could hear the harsh laughter of a god. Whoa. I mean, guess Pormquald's dead, so maybe he won't be as pissed.
Well, I still am pissed because he got the, it was, I'd rather take his death than being nailed to a cross. Chop my head off quick, done. I don't want to be nailed to a cross, spikes through my arms and legs and suffering in the sun. Just cut my head off.
I thought they were sliding beds at the end.
Well, whatever. A sliding bed across. They're getting crucified basically either way. It's a slow and painful death, right?
Yep.
Pormquald got off easy.
I love the fact that Duker's defiance is just it's going. Like he knows that this can't turn out well for him, etc., etc. He's just fuck you, just that fuck you attitude. Just I love it. I absolutely love his defiance. And I think it's funny that he just leaves it up to Dom to call him a soldier or a historian, but just not, what was it, 2 chapters ago? He was just like, I am no longer a historian, I'm an old man. And then Coltain calls him a soldier.
Right.
Because old men are wise. So I thought that was like some weird poetic justice in some way, shape, or form.
I don't really have anything to add to you there.
Oh, all right. Well, my next thought was that when Rel slaps the cheek of Duker, Rel has a ton of rings on, and it basically cracks open his Duker's barely healed split lip, and it just fucking sounds painful. So I winced at that when I read the part about the rings.
Yeah, it wouldn't feel good.
Nope. Also, I don't know if you ever caught this though, but when he lands on the ground, he expects to see fragments of glass because he felt something shatter against his chest. Well, what did he have around his neck?
That vial.
But there was nothing on the thong, like his necklace piece. So what happened to the vial that Dujek gave Coltain and then gave to Duker?
I don't know. I don't know what happened to it. I'm questioning still.
Gotcha. But I mean, do you think it broke, or do you think that it's just lost on the ground somewhere?
Well, did it say it shattered in the book?
No, it says that he felt something shatter against his chest, but there were no fragments of glass on the ground.
Well, how could something shatter but not be broken?
I don't know, man. Maybe it's like inside his shirt.
Maybe. I mean, that makes sense to me. But yeah, what the hell was this thing? What was it supposed to do? I mean, I think that would definitely be a question I have for Mr. Erickson. And if it's a wait and find out, then that's fine. But because it seemed there seemed to be a lot of importance placed on this.
Right. Well, I mean, is it possible that in the next couple of chapters, a demon gets released and then just annihilates Dom as some type of like more poetic justice?
Maybe. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I don't know. I was wondering when that vial was going to come into play, and I mean, at least this far, it's been a letdown, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but like, it's not what I expected. I expected it to do something, and it hasn't.
Yeah. I guess I don't know. I'm gonna guess that that's probably, if I had to make a prediction about the next two chapters, I think that there's definitely got to be a way to end what's happened. Like, this still feels like unresolved, even though there's definitely some finality to it based on the next section here.
Yeah.
I guess the only other thing that I'll comment on was the fact that Pormqual rode better headless than he did, when he had a head.
I did notice that also, and I thought that was kind of funny.
And then also just the fact that, his horse is basically slapped into the 10,000 Malazan soldiers centered in the basin, and they stop the horse and remove his body. But nobody seems to be mourning. I think they all recognize how much of an idiot he is, especially in this moment in time.
Yeah. Idiot would be a nice word for him.
Or as Duiker would say, fool.
There's probably other words I would use, but I won't.
Dumbass, dumb shit, fuck up, asshole.
Sure.
Cool. I guess outside of that, I don't have anything else to add to that. All of these series events, starting from my second to last chapter, is just one big giant spiral into fucking the abyss.
Yeah. Well, you want me to drive the final nail in here?
Do it. I see what you did there.
All right. Yeah, this one hurt about as bad as the last chapter. Yeah. I guess this was, just so everybody knows, this was the spoiler that I came across, was that well, I'll talk about it after. But there was no shortage of spikes, but it still took a day and a half to nail the last screaming prisoner to the last cross on Aaron Way. 10,000 dead and dying Malazans watched the road. Duiker was the last to go. The rusty spikes driven into his wrists and upper arms to hold him in place. More were driven into his ankles and thighs. It was pain as he had never known it before. What made it worse was that he knew the pain would not recede until he was unconscious. With the trauma of nearly 40 hours of being driven up the road, watching each soldier nailed before him, he was well beyond shock when it came to his time. The pain of the spikes being driven through his flesh voided his bowels, but the worst pain was when the scaffolding used to raise him up was taken away and his full body weight rested on the spikes. Until that moment, he had believed he had experienced as much pain as was humanly possible. He was, however, wrong. After what felt like forever, a certain clarity fell over Duiker. He thought of the Jaghut ghost, but did not know why. He wondered what the Jaghut, or anyone for that matter, meant to him. He was about to cross Hood's gate. The time for memories, regrets, and comprehension is past. He could see that now. His nameless Marine waited for him, along with all the other friends he had made on the hell-made journey. A ghostly, tusked face arose in his mind's eye, and though he had never seen it, he knew it was the Jaghut. The gravest compassion filled its unhuman eyes, and Duiker could not fathom why. Duiker thought to it, why grieve, Jaghut? He would not haunt eternity as the Jaghut had. He would not return to this place ever again. He would not suffer ever again. Hood was about to bless him, and there was no reason for the Jaghut to grieve. Though the thought remained in Duiker's mind for only a few moments longer as the darkness crept in around him and swallowed him. With the darkness, awareness ceased.
part gave me chills, goosebumps when I read it the first time.
Yeah, but it was absolutely brutal. Like I feel like, he was, when that first soldier was put up, Duiker was there, and then the rest of them, he was there. It says he was the last, and he had 40 hours to watch it all. But I feel like they must have made him go to every single one, which would just be terrible.
Yeah, absolute torture right there.
Yeah.
The only thing that I could think about is I know that when Duiker made his journey from the coast through Hisar out of trying to, catch up to Coltane, he sees a bunch of people on sliding beds. And I remember, I could be wrong, but I feel like I remember him saying that he hopes he never has to do that. And here he is on a sliding bed.
I guess that was foreshadowing. But yeah, this, like I was saying, this was the spoiler. I had saw a Facebook post that somebody said essentially that they hoped Duiker stayed dead. So I knew it was coming. I didn't know when. I didn't know how it was going to happen. And it was about as terrible as what I could think. I mean, I couldn't think of anything worse, I guess. Pretty terrible.
Yeah. My question is like, why would they want him to stay dead? Like, is Duiker a character in the Malazan universe that people are torn between?
I think the person who posted this did not care for his points of view.
I mean, I guess I'm struggling to find a point of view. I mean, yeah, he was dour, but again, I feel like it goes back to our realistic versus pessimistic and optimistic conversation during the many conversations about Duiker's character. I'm not going to fault him for being a realist, especially in that type of situation.
Right.
I don't think that he was pessimistic. He maybe had his moments. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it just depends on your perspective. But me myself, I'm sad that he's gone. And to me, I know that, and I appreciate you not spoiling this because, I got a genuine experience from it.
I would not purposefully spoil it.
Right. But I don't know why I didn't see it coming though. Like, I don't know why in my head I thought he would make it to the end.
Well, we haven't really had any indication that he wouldn't make it.
Right.
So that's what I told, I told you, you would not see it coming with who it was going to be.
Yeah, but I mean, now reading it, it seems so obvious. You know what I mean?
I guess I don't feel that way, but that's just me. It still feels surprising to me. I mean, we just lost Coltane, and now we lose Duiker.
List, Lol, all of those guys. I thought it was sad in the previous section that he couldn't look away from trying to find familiar faces.
Yeah.
But also another thing is we don't get any resolve on the note the female Marine gave him. He never gets a moment to read that.
I know. Yeah. I wonder. That would be a question I would ask, I think, is if he had anything, if Mr. Erickson had anything in mind what that would have read.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to start a Google Doc right now.
I know, Duiker, he's seeing the Jaghut ghost, but part of me kept feeling like, what if it's Fenner for some reason?
You think Fenner is a Jaghut?
Well, what if it just wasn't a Jaghut?
You think Fenner was the one that laughed?
I don't know. I mean, have we really seen Fenner again?
No, but I feel like Jan said that he comes back, like we
right.
see.
That's what I was remembering, but Fenner has tusks, right? Or is a boar or whatever. I don't know that. It was just a thought. I don't really think there's much there to it or anything there to it, but it was just something that I thought about.
So do you think that Duiker in his last moments thinks it's a Jaghut, but it's really Fenner?
Maybe. I don't know. It was just a thought. I guess I'm not really leaning one way or the other. Just a thought and something I thought I'd mention.
Okay. All right. Well, I like that. I mean, it's making me think. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time that we've been misled with blatant information and it's actually something else.
I'm just coming from left field to baseball fields over, so that's all.
That's fair. Well, I mean, I guess we'll just have to read and find out, right? I mean,
yeah,
I'm totally going to knock out this next chapter when we're done here, and I'm sure that I'll probably be texting you, even though you'll be Betty by.
I don't know that I'll read it tonight.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a hell of a chapter. Anything else you want to say about it?
Not at all. I feel like we've talked about everything. I feel like I forgot to mention something in Mappo's like inner dialogue in section 5 there. When he's talking about, so he has a thought about how comfort of like familiarity rise up like a god, as change itself had become something demonic. I almost kind of feel like that's either pertaining to his inner turmoil about his choices for Icarium, but also I'm kind of wondering if he's describing Moby. How could the comfort of a familiar rise up like a god as change itself had become something demonic? Like, is that just coincidence? Or does that pertain to Moby in some way, shape, or form? Was he actually talking about like his inner turmoil, or was he like recalling events of Moby opening the door of Tremolor?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. I just thought it was weird, a weird thought. And I'm not sure which way I lean there either.
Very weird.
Yeah. But anyway, I guess that's all I had outside of that. And yeah, I guess I'm good to conclude chapter 22 here.
Yeah, we've got, chapter 23, chapter 24, and the epilogue. So I guess I'll mention this now. You know about it. And I've been kind of waiting for some word back, but I don't think there's any harm in talking about it now, because I think by the time this airs, we will have already done it. But on the 22nd of this month, we will be a part of 10 very big books, 10-hour live stream at some point for a half hour, something like that. They've invited us on for that. So as you told me before you hit record on this, in the last 8 days, we've recorded 3 episodes. So we're making a pretty big push to get this book done by the time we get to that live stream. I know we're both eager to get this done, but to at least where we could fully talk about 2 books with 10 very big books. So that's coming. And then also, just before you hit the record button again, I had messaged Mr. Erickson, asked him about a date, August 12th, Saturday, August 12th. So hopefully we'll hear back from that soon and see if that will be the day that we get to talk to him. So a couple exciting things there. And I guess that time between 10 very big books and Mr. Erickson, I would think we'll probably crank out a few Curse of the Fallen episodes and talk to HC again before we start Memories of Ice, which will be pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, my question is do you want to start Memories of Ice before we talk to Erickson?
We could. We could maybe at least do the prologue.
Yeah, I say we just keep going. I think that our interview with Erickson is not unlike our chapter recap or our book recaps, but maybe what we do is we throw in an episode with Maura and Lee and just wrap up Deadhouse Gates and do kind of like an official wrap up where maybe some lingering questions we can either get denied or maybe get some answers to.
Sure.
So
yeah, I'm sure we could probably make, as long as it works with them.
Yeah, I feel like Maura and Lee do a really good job of like letting us down easy.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I guess I will bid you adieu.
Yeah, have a good night, man. And yeah, let me know if you read the chapter tonight. I guess, I probably won't get to it tonight, but hope everybody out there has a good night. Follow us on Twitter if you're not already. We're just about to 400 subscribers. And again, if you're financially able and feel the urge to join our Patreon, we would very much appreciate that. And we would love to have you along for that side of things.
There's still a week for free on Patreon, so give it a shot. If you don't like it, no harm, no foul, no worries. But, at least you'd be able to see some of the behind the scenes stuff, which is just video of us talking, which is sometimes humorous because there's things that don't always make it into the final cut. So
you might probably see me chewing on my fingernails. There's that if you like that, I guess.
Right, all of the cat appearances that show up.
I didn't have any tonight.
The random straws you find in your closet, things like that.
Right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, man. Well, I'll talk to you later.
All right. Have a good night. Have a safe trip here.
Yeah, you too. Enjoy your 4th.
Thank you much.
Bye.
Bye.